All right, well, welcome everybody. Today we're talking about, well, essentially it's a now what kind of a session. Um, when you think about the pipeline to get listings, there are lots of little potential hazards, roadblocks that you could encounter. So first of all, if you want to get listings, you need to know who to contact in order to get them. For sale by owners, one of our agents has been recently calling for sale by owners, getting appointments. But you're going to have to do something to reach out to them, which means not only do you have to get a list, but it also means you're going to have to learn what to say. So you've practiced what do you say when you're talking to somebody? You've done all that. Now you have an appointment, and now you have to practice the listing appointment. You have to know what to say. You have to have a presentation. If you are calling people but you don't know what to say, you won't get appointments. If you get appointments and you don't know what to say, you won't get listings. So now let's say everything is going well and you've got the listing. Congratulations. Now what? Now, if you don't do an effective job in servicing the listing, then not only is the seller going to be unhappy, but they're going to tell other people that not to use you as well. I'm about to get another referral for, it's going to be a rental, a few $1,000s, nothing terrible. But the seller is somebody that I had worked with before. And when I was talking to him, he said, well, you sold, to this, our parents' house and everything was fine. There were no complaints. And I kidded him and I said, if it wasn't fine, you'd be telling me. And he laughed and he said, yeah, I wouldn't have let it go. So because they were happy, I get another opportunity. And when I first started farming a geographic area, the first I got a listing. This is in Blossom Valley on Crow Court, Crow Lane, actually the first one. And then the neighbors, when that one went pending, the neighbors that were thinking of selling the property asked the neighbor whose listing I had if they were happy. They said they were happy. Then I got a second listing on the same street, and then a third listing on the same street, and then a fourth listing, and then one around the corner, and one, and well, you get the idea. Right. So what that means is we not only need to know what to say to get the appointment and what to say in order to get the appointment to sign the listing, we now have to do something with it. Right. We have to do something with it. Hence what we're talking about today. And I sure hope that's it. Yeah, a handout for those of you that are looking at a handout. And we also may be going to visit the internet as we're going through. So I just want to start with this and then we'll skip around and do some other things. So what do you do? Oops, wrong one. How about here? All right, there we go. So this is a, well, partial list. It's a partial list. And some of the things I'm going to talk about because there's some tactics involved. For those of you that are members of the PLACE team, what we have already are auto plans for, first of all, when you are about to get a listing and when you have a listing, you'll notice on this list of auto plans, that one is here, pre-list and active listing 4.1. That's an auto plan. There are 171 different steps.
Hey, Michael.
Yes.
So sorry to interrupt you. Can you repost the link because I got the link I got was to Zoom. Link
Well,
is not
I'm
working.
sorry, that was probably not right. Then let me try this, okay? Uh, Well, all right.
Thank you, sir.
And I'd be willing to sell you the background with the fireplace if you're interested. Somebody's. Um, so there are in our system 171 tasks, things to do, things to send, text to send, things to look up, 171 of them. That, by the way, does not include the 166. Is everybody getting the new one? Is it the wrong one I put in the second time?
I was able to open it in an incognito tab.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, the link has been resent. It's the correct link now.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll do it another time. All right, let me know if I need to do it again. All right. So there are 171 tasks involved in the auto plan right before and when you have an active listing, and then when it goes under contract, there's another 166 potential tasks and things that need to be done. A lot of times agents don't realize that. All right, so you've got the listing. What are you gonna do? You got to put up the for sale sign. You're gonna have to make a flyer. You're gonna have to have a photographer. We're gonna have somebody come and maybe make a video of it. You're going to have to put a lockbox and a combo box on the property. You're gonna have to put it in the multiple listing service. You're gonna have to fill out all of that. You're gonna have to write a description. You're gonna have to create social media posts. You're gonna have to, well, it just goes on and on and on. Right, so part of what we do at Place is we do most of those tasks for you. But for those of you that are, I'm going to do it all myself, right? Because I don't know, it's you don't want to do all of this yourself, right? So, but what would you be doing is, number one is you have to just get the whole file set up. The agreement that you have with your broker, and it really doesn't matter which your broker is, if it's EXP or Keller Williams or Coldwell Banker, it says in the independent contractor agreement that you need to turn in all of the paperwork to your broker within 1 business day as soon as possible. And partly that's connected to the fact that under the clear cooperation rule, which we all for now are living by, it says that when you take a listing, you either have to put it in the MLS within 1 business day. You have to do something within 1 business day. And those somethings could be, you could put it in as an active listing, but if you're not ready to show the property, you would put it in not as an active listing, but a coming soon, or if you're in my MLS, it can be called a members only. And if you have no idea, right, what you want to do with the listing yet, because you don't really want members calling you and you don't want people asking you about it coming soon, you would put it in as an exclusion. Does everybody understand? Those are really the 3 basic choices. One is fully active. That means it would be on Zillow. 2 is the in-between category, which could be called members only or could become called vacant soon. And the 3rd is simply called an exclusion. And the exclusion, you don't have to tell them very much other than the address of the property, but you're complying with the clear cooperation rule by telling the MLS officially you have a listing. So you need to get all that together. And by the way, EXP, as does Keller Williams and Coldwell Banker and Intero and Berkshire Hathaways, and as almost all brokers, they want you to be turning in all of the signed documents like right away. They want to see it right away. All right, and so there's a lot of forms to upload. One of the reasons that you're going, if you want to make money in real estate, you don't want to be a transaction coordinator, because you'll spend hours uploading documents to SkySlope, Dotloop, whatever flavor of transaction management system your broker is going to use. You would open escrow and get an escrow number. Now, in a very technical legal sense, you're not opening escrow. I mean, not really, because the legal definition of an active escrow requires the buyer to have a contract. But the escrow company is doing this sort of as a warm-up. And not only are they going to give you an escrow number, but one of the other things you want is a preliminary title report. Because if there's weirdness, Like, for example, the seller has owed child support in the past and didn't pay it. That doesn't go away, right? You say, well, it was 20, I had one, oh, it was over 20 years ago. No, you still have to pay it off, right? And so we were still finding judgments and things like that. Now, depending upon which county you're in California, and the, I don't know, politeness of the buyer's agent, you will either be able to keep that escrow open with that particular title company or not. Why would that change? Well, Santa Clara County, the seller pays customarily title and escrow. Alameda County, the buyer pays. So generally, the whoever is paying thinks they ought to get to pick, right? And so if you open up escrow with Chicago title and it's an Alameda County listing and the buyer says, no, I want to use First American title, they're paying for it. And it's kind of hard to argue that they can't use the one they want. But you want to do that. You want to get a prelim. Part of the plan is to collect all the necessary documentation to sell the property in advance, not piecemeal as you're going along. That requires a preliminary title report, which you get when you open escrow. You ought to set up an MLS auto alert. Now, I've told this story before, I'm sure, but I've had listings where I listed it and I was busy, I was doing other things. And then the owner would call me and say, hey, there's a for sale sign that just went up across the street. And then I'd have to rush and look and see what happened, who was it, what did they list it for, that sort of thing. Then the for sale sign would disappear and the owner would say, hey, what happened to that listing across the street? The sign is gone, and I'd have to go do more research. So finally, because I'm lazy, I'm time efficient, what I do if I have a listing is I create an auto alert, a listing auto alert in the multiple listing service for all the different categories: active, pending, contingent, canceled, expired, withdrawn, everything, price increase, everything that could happen. And I do it within a radius of where my listing is. And if the listing is like a condominium or something, then it's like a quarter of a mile because, they're not that big. If it's a single family home, I might go out a half of a mile. And then the two options are either to have the alerts go to you so that you can, like do a screenshot and share it with the seller. Hey, that other unit just went pending, that sort of thing. But my issue with having it go to me and then me sharing it with the seller is sometimes I was busy, right? There was a point when I had as many as 15 listings, and I also was the vice president of a real estate group, and I just wasn't paying that close of attention. So then I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a search. I'm going to make the sellers the contact. I'm going to have a copy go to me. And I'm going to ask them, do you want to know what's going on as soon as it happens or every day? What would you like? Some of them say as soon as it happens. So I pick ASAP in the auto alert, which means that 15 minutes after something happens in that area, there's an email generated, sent to the seller and to me. So that they think I'm actually manually doing this. I don't know. But then I'm not behind where there's a new listing, there was a price reduction, something sold, something was canceled, and I didn't even know. This may sound strange, but the sellers are thinking that you're paying super close attention to their property, that you're constantly looking at the market, you're always checking the competition, and that you're doing it pretty much full time, right? And when they find out that may not be true, that stuff is happening and you don't even know that stuff is happening in that neighborhood, it's not a good look, right? Because then they know he's really not spending that much time. Set up an auto alerts. You can create a market report. Now, at Place, we have one that's very good, and it actually does a 3 mile radius. You can, I don't know how much modification, but it would let them know what's going on, days on market. Is the inventory going up and down? Are there price reductions? That's the kind of information that you want to communicate with sellers. What is the number one complaint that buyers and sellers have of their real estate agent? It's a failure to communicate. I know most of you aren't old enough to know what movie that line came from, but anyhow, prepare and upload everything. The transfer disclosure statement, the seller property questionnaire, if you're the listing agent, your agent visual inspection disclosure, the market conditions advisory, the insurance advisory, everything. Statewide buyer and seller advisory, the everything, right? And the goal is to get everything ready before we put it on the market. Everything. And the reason we do that is because what we would like, if we represent the seller, is for the buyer to make an offer that is not contingent upon inspections. Now, how do we do that? Well, we have all the inspections. And if you're saying, well, in my area, we don't do it, and I don't want to do it, and my seller doesn't want to do it, there are lots of problems that can come if you don't already have all of this done in advance. If you don't have stuff, so let me just put it this way. If you have all the stuff and the buyer makes an offer, they're making the offer with all that stuff as a constructive knowledge of all that stuff. In other words, if you've given them a termite report and it says there's $10,000 worth of damage before they make the offer, then technically they can't use that report to back out because they already knew about it before they made the offer. But if you don't give them these documents and you don't give them the disclosures until after they've made the offer, it triggers a minimum 3-day right of rescission. So they can get out. Sometimes when I'm helping an agent representing a buyer, and I ask to see the disclosures, and they say, well, they don't have that. They have that's all they have. I'm thinking, oh, good. We can get out of this contract if we want to, right? If things go bad. That's the goal. Now, if you're hearing the sound of my voice, you are probably either in a Glide or a Disclosure IO, also known as HomeLink, because those are disclosure company services that have been picked by different MLSs. Right, in Southern California, Glide has the gig. In Northern California, HomeLight has the gig. And what it does, it's a system where you can put all of the disclosures, get everything online. Agents have to fill out a form. They can share it with the buyers. You know who's downloaded this disclosures. You can communicate easily with them. Any questions about that, right? That's just and you have to submit everything to the broker. Screen sharing. I wish, let me do that again. Thank you for saying that. I hope everybody's looking at the same thing. Step 2. I wish I'd known that earlier, but step 2. It's the rain that's doing it to me. Property preparation. Is this going to be a retail or a wholesale sale? Retail sales sell for higher prices, but then it means you have to get everything done, like, fix stuff that's broken and paint if it needs to be paint and windows washed and cleaning and all of that stuff, staging, all of that stuff. And sometimes one of the things that you should expect to hear from a seller is, what should I do to get my house ready for sale? What should I do? All right, now you may or may not be good at this already. Right? And there are lots of lists of things you could do. I'm not particularly good at it. There are some things that are kind of obvious, but I'm not particularly good at it. So I had, a favorite stager. And what I would do is I would say, well, part of my process is I'm going to bring a professional stager over and she's going to go through the property with you and give you what your different options are, that sort of thing. You're going to need, and this is all part of our, what value do you have? As a real estate agent, you should know a plumber and an electrician. You should know a landscaper. You should know a window washer. You should know a house cleaner. You should know somebody that removes garbage, makes it disappear. You should know handymen. You should know contractors. Or you should know advisors, CPAs, and things like that. By the way, some of you I know have gone to broker meetings, I'm sure. Do they tell you that you should only recommend one? Like if they say, a plumber, you should only give them one? Or two or three? The answer is generally three. So it would be good for you to know three plumbers, does everybody understand that this is important? If the seller says to you, hey, look at the front yard, the tenant's really, trashed it, that's going to need to be fixed before we can sell the house. You know a good landscaper. And I say, no, I don't. No, I don't. Oh, okay. Well, obviously we're gonna need to paint the place, you can see, it's all peeling and everything. You know a good painter? And I said, no, I don't. Huh? Well, the kitchen needs a new floor. You know any good flooring contractors? I say, no, any of those either. This doesn't sound good, does it? Right? Because they're thinking, gee, this guy's not much of a real estate agent. He doesn't know anyone that we would need throughout the transaction. Do you know contractors that would build the escrow? Do we have a list, by the way. EXP has a list, and we call it sometimes Allied Resources. You should have a group that you could recommend. You should have all of these trusted vendors. And this is not a complete list. But what would need, the general pattern is, we listed tonight. We're not going to show it right away because a lot of the stuff hasn't been done. And part of the job of either the real estate agent that's the listing agent or the team, right? If you're on a team, is to make a schedule to get all these things taken care of, right? So we fix, we clean, we stage, we take photographs. And by the way, the standard, and Angela, if you would look at the chat and if something comes up, just shout at me.
You got it.
All right, because so that's the sequence.
Okay, did you get Emily said, can we find Allied Resources in EXP World?
Yeah. Why? All right. So let's say you do not know a landscaper. You could go to EXP's workplace and type in, anyone know a good landscaper? You could contact your association of realtors, which sometimes has lists of people that do certain things, and they'll give it to you. This is not the best practice. The reason it's not the best practice, even though you may have somebody that's vouching for them, is that they have a relationship with another real estate agent. So my suggestion would be how would we find a landscaper? Oh my God, that sounds so difficult. If only we had, computers and an internet. And are there any sites that rate plumbers and landscapers? How about Yelp? How about that? So I go to Yelp and I'm looking for landscapers not too big that have good reviews. And I find one and I call them up and I say, hey, my name is Mike Devlin, I'm a real estate broker. And I'm putting together a preferred vendor list for my client database, and I happen to need a good landscaper, and I was checking out your reviews, and it looks like you're killing it in the landscaping business. Congratulations, you got great reviews. Are you accepting new clients at this time? Now, I've had people say, no, I'm busy, I'm booked, the guy just quit. Great, you call another landscaper. The next landscaper says, well, yeah, I am, sure, I can handle more. Yeah, what do you got? And I'd say, well, wonderful, that's great. I'm going to put you on my list and maybe we can work together. And when your clients have real estate related questions, do you have someone you already refer them to? Sometimes they'll say yes. My husband's an agent, my wife's an agent, my brother's an agent, my kid's an agent. Call another landscaper. Now, if you do this for a while, you're going to find a landscaper with good reviews who doesn't have a set relationship with a real estate agent yet. Oh, see, maybe they could give us business too. How about that? For those of you that are wondering, gee, do you have a system for setting this up? Check out my YouTube video, How to Be a Great Networker. Just saying that, right? And so I have scripts and I have follow-up stuff, but what we really want is to have, we don't need vendors. We want partners. We want people that will refer business to us and we can refer business to them, right? This is more effective than just posting, hey, anybody know a landscaper, right? I mean, you may get one, but the chances are they're not going to be beholden to you. Any questions about that? All right. You want to have a list. You would like to have a working relationship with them. Anything, if there's something else I was going to say about that, but oh, and when it comes to videography, 3D virtual tours, professional photography, the standard now is drone, right? And so even in my market, what are relatively expensive single family homes that I've listed, the drone flies around, takes pictures of the area. You have two types of virtual tours. One is the stitched together photograph, zooming in and zooming out, like a Ken Burns documentary kind of a thing, zooming in, zooming out, fading into the next photograph, or a for real 3-dimensional virtual tour. Which, by the way, if you're dealing with a relatively high-end property, is kind of a standard thing. Kind of a standard thing. How much do they cost? $600. There's more competition. Now, Matterport is probably still the biggest market. $800 sometimes. You can get a package, photographs, drone, 3D tour, the whole thing. If you've got a nice house, you're going to want to do all that. Do I need to look at the chats?
No, I just sent the How to Become a Good Networker, but Neil did ask, Michael, you suggest to have all forms filled out and signed at the listing appointment?
No. By all forms, it's the word all. So at the listing appointment, we sign the listing. Now the listing is bundled. So there's an agency disclosure, 2 pages, there's a fair housing, there's a possible representation of more than one buyer or seller, there's a wire fraud advisory, then there's a listing agreement, then there's a seller advisory, then there's a privacy. It's a bundle. That's all we do at the listing appointment. If you get into the TDS and the SPQ, first of all, it's too long. Right. In other words, I don't know how many hours you plan on spending at the listing appointment. It becomes TDS. Anyhow, so also the TDS and SPQ in particular have parts of it that might scare the seller. They're like, oh, we have to do this. Oh, we have to do that. My suggestion is if you're at the listing appointment and they say that it's okay, you can be the agent, you get them to sign and get out of there. Stop talking. Get them to sign and leave. and make an appointment you're going to send them the information on the TDS and the SPQ, that's another conversation, right? Because those are sometimes difficult forms to fill out. I'll do a class later on those disclosures, and we use different systems to send it to them so that they can fill it out easily, but we don't want to do it at the listing appointment. You know? Was that anything else burning? All right. Thank you.
No.
Get keys. Put a e-key lockbox and a combo box, both. 2 keys. One of them is in the lockbox, which real estate agents can access. The other one is in the combination box. Why? Well, the only people that can use the e-key superbox lockbox are, well, real estate agents or appraisers that have the key, but most people, I mean, you know, it's a very narrow band. What if you're going to have somebody do something? Take measurements, do an inspection, paint. A combo box is you can give them the combination and they could get in. Otherwise, you're going to drive to the house every time to open the door for everyone that needs to go inside. Now, if you only have one listing, this, you know, all right, why not? But let's say you are working the system and you have 10 listings, 15 listings. What are you going to do? You'll spend all your time driving around to different places, right? Just open the door to let people in while you're sitting there watching them do something. Right? Not a good use of your time. Also, this is going to happen. An agent is going to show up from out of the area. And for example, in Silicon Valley, if you're in San Francisco, Alameda, Contra Costa, Santa Clara, San Mateo, Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito County, your lockbox key will work in all of those counties, assuming that the listing agent has installed the right kind of lockbox. If you're from MetroList territory, San Francisco, not San Francisco works, Barris, the North Bay MLS, if you're from those MLS, your lockbox key is not going to work in our area. Why? Because MetroList and Barris and some of the others have said our key won't work there unless we pay them $100 and something and fill out a form. So we say if your people want to come here, you got to pay us the same amount of money and fill out a form. So what happens is if you have listings that are at the nub, and by the way, in Southern California, there's more than one system for lockboxes. Some of them use Showing Time, some of them use Supra, some of them use, you know, Century Lock, excuse me. Some use Supra, and I've talked to agents who got in their car, drove for several hours to show property, and then they found out their lockbox key does not work. If you're in San Francisco and you drive to Marin County, your lockbox key won't work. Won't work, right? Because it's a different area. So then the agent calls the listing agent. The buyer's agent calls the listing agent and says, hey, we're standing right in front of your listing. We drove 3 hours in order to show it. My clients are really, really interested, but my lockbox key won't work. How can I get inside? Can you come over and open the door? I say, do you see the combo box? I'm texting you the combination, you know, go for it, right? I don't put it in the MLS, but I keep it for what happens if I need to give somebody access and I don't want to actually have to drive there to do it. Order and install. You should have a for sale sign. It should have a brochure box. It should also have a QR code. What would the QR code take people to? It's called a single property website. And if you're at any kind of a major brokerage, your system would create something like that. Certainly at Place we do. So the single property website is all the information about your listing with your branding. And you QR code, they click on, they go there. By the way, other use of the QR code is, let's say your virtual tour is a YouTube, you've uploaded it to YouTube. And you can say, if you scan the QR code, you're going to get a walkthrough virtual tour of this property. And a lot of people will do that, right? They'll click on it. They'll, but brochures, QR code, you're going to eventually have to have directions or signage. That's not exactly what I meant here, but whatever. So in the MLS, one of the things we're going to have to say is showing instructions. Now, the choices of showing instructions are, let's start with the best. The best one is go direct, right? No appointment needed, just go, right? Now, that, of course, if it's not vacant, maybe they don't want people to just go and show up, but obviously agents, you'll get more showings. Option number 2, call first, then use the key safe, the lockbox. In that scenario, they would call and talk to somebody. What is happening more often than not is we would sit down with the seller and we would say, when can we show the property? Well, you can do all day Saturday, you can do all day Sunday between this hour and that hour. You can do it during the week at these days. And then in the MLS system, and almost every MLS has an arrangement with a showing platform, you can set it up like a Calendly. By the way, you could use Calendly, but your MLS already probably provides one where you can identify what times the property is available for showing. You have a showing link, which you put into the private remarks in the MLS, and you let agents click on that link and just book it. That also gives you, well, you know who's showing it because they have to fill out a little form. Your Supra key or your SentryLock key, whichever, or system, the box, is going to keep track of who opens the box, right? It'll tell you, right? And by the way, in case your seller is asking, the boxes have timers. They don't work at 2 a.m. It starts at a certain time and it ends at a certain time every day, and those times can be modified by the agent in the system. You should write an MLS description. Artificial intelligence can help you. If you're wondering, I don't know what to say, what my suggestion is, don't shade your eyes. Right? I don't know if you've ever heard this line. Don't shade your eyes. Remember why they made your eyes. Plagiarize. So you run all of the properties that have sold recently, active and pending, within a certain area of your listing and read what the agents have said. And you might say, oh, I didn't realize it was next to that transportation thing. Oh, I didn't know that that park was over there. Oh, I didn't realize. And you kind of borrow from all that. And I drop it into AI, any of the major programs, and it writes it up nice and clean. Inside, you could put together a binder. If you're wondering, how would I get a binder? And I don't like to buy binders and I have to put in tabs, and who would help me with something like that? It's called the title company, right? The title companies, by the way, generally will give you booties, the little things in the little box that you can put them in for people to wear if that's what you're doing. They'll give you stuff because they're very happy you opened up escrow with them. And they have binders, and the binders have tabs, and they'll put stuff in it. And then you could put stuff in it. Now, I create a digital version of this, but the buyer's agents don't want you to be giving your digital version to their buyers. It's complicated, but you could do both, just saying, right? But all of that kind of information you could put in. Any questions so far? Okay. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Buyers will judge the property simply based upon the pictures they see in Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, etc. The studies have shown by Realtor.com, Zillow, and all the major portals that if you have a 3D tour, more people are going to look at it, because you'll notice if you go into Zillow or Redfin or Realtor.com and you're doing a search, one of the little buttons you can click is to see the ones with 3D tours. And people like this. They could walk around and look around and move around in the property. If you've ever heard the term house porn and you're wondering what are they talking about, these are the people that spend all day long on their phone looking at, well, 3D tours, you know. So if the property is worthy, right, you might want to make that part of your pitch. Single property websites in the Play system and in most of the major portals, brokerages, they give you a portal where you could, you know, it'll create one for you. And you want to write a nice MLS description. There's public remarks and private remarks. And what you want to do is to load the public remarks with useful, enticing information. So for example, if the house is a 2-story, 5-bedroom, 3-bath house, my suggestion in the public remarks is not to say, this is a 2-story, 5-bedroom, 3-bath house. All right, why? Because you've just eaten up space. There's a limited amount of space, and it already says that right above the remarks. It already has that description. So you want to talk about other aspects, amenities of the property, other than the bare bone numbers. All right, so we got the listing, we have stuff to do, we've planned on when we're going to make it live. And by the way, during this process, there's a form that your broker is going to want to see called an SELM form, which is the seller election to not put it in the MLS right away. You can extend it, you can do it quicker, but you're just supposed to have it. So marketing, you're going to want just listed. You're going to post it everywhere, all of your social media sites. You could don't run paid ads. That's my suggestion until you really thought about it. Notice there are targeted buyer demographics. That's another conversation. Can we determine what income level a person would likely have if they were buying a particular home, given the price and the standard loan and general qualifying things? Yeah, we could do that. Could we determine where people move from that move into a given neighborhood? Yeah, there's software that'll give you somebody's history. May cost a fee. But generally, we're not spending money on ads. Now, if you were going to contact targeted buyer demographics, that would be best done with a phone call. And at Place, we have all of the software for identifying those people and their contact information in the system. You're going to want to send an email to everybody. Past clients, active buyers, local agents. How many of you get listing flyers, right? There's net listings, there's a bunch of them where you pay a fee, it's not that expensive, and they email your listing to like all the real estate agents in that particular county. Yeah. Why do we do that? Well, it's something. So when I'm explaining this to a seller, I talk about the two paths that we have to go down in order to market their property. One is to the public. The other one is to real estate agents. So and I have a marketing plan where I break it down into other groups, but if we're talking to real estate agents, what would we do to let real estate agents know that the property's for sale? One is we could send an email to all the real estate agents saying, hey, check out this listing. That's one. Number two, we could find out when the local board tour is, for that particular area, and we could find out what the process is, and we could put it on the local tour where you go and you show up and you pay $5 and they give you coffee and a high carbohydrate breakfast snack. And then at some point in the meeting, all the listing agents get up and pitch their listings, and then everybody goes and drives around and looks at the listings, and you have little, giveaways and food and they get people to look. And so that's number two, right? Number one is email everybody. Maybe they read it, maybe they don't. Number two, put it on the board tour. And number three, there's something called reverse prospecting. And that's down here, right, as well. Reverse prospecting. I get asked a lot about this. So let me demonstrate. All right. Now, if you're using MLS listings, what I've done is I've chosen, it doesn't work as far as I can see under the new cool looking login. All right, so here. So when you generally log in, it's going to, and so this is going to vary a little bit if you're in Paragon World or Rapatoni World. This is what my MLS typically looks like. I can't do reverse prospecting from here, right? If there's a way, I haven't found it. But old school, what I do is I go back to where it says the logo, and I click on it. And what I want to do is, where is it? I want to go, I was just there. Pro dashboard, search products, and matrix. What I want to do is I want to get back to the old dashboard. That's it. Okay, here's the old dashboard. Well, that's nice. Now what do we do? Well, over here it says active listings. So I click on that, and here's an active listing I have. Notice what happens when I click on this box. This button pops up called reverse prospecting. Now, what this is doing is it's showing me all of the real estate agents in my MLS, and it shows me what is it about all these agents? They all have MLS searches that my listing would show up in. I actually know this agent. I should call her. Anyhow, in other words, all of these agents have buyers that have searches where my listing would fit in it. And so the idea is maybe if you were to reach out to them, which you could do either through email or texting or call them, you could say, hey, did you see my listing over in Union City, blah, 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 right? And so those are the most common ways of us marketing it to other agents, right? We go to the board tour, we might email all the real estate agents in the county, and we might reach out in the reverse prospecting. All right. Any questions about that? Don't everybody blurt them out at once. All right. So all MLSs have that feature someplace. Design and print, you need to make flyers, feature sheets, just listed postcards, flyers, go knock on doors, call people, all of that. Again, if you're on the place team, we're going to make the flyer for you. We're going to make the postcard for you, all of that stuff. Submit it to the MLS, and it goes to RPR automatically through the MLS, reverse prospecting, go to the board meeting, schedule the broker tour, personally notify agents you've worked with. I'm more of the if they're looking, they'll find it. But it never hurts to mention it. You could post it on Workplace and brag about it. You could go to all the different Facebook groups and post it. Again, at Place, we'll make the social media posts for you. So it's just, copying and paste them. You're going to want to do open houses. It's better to schedule the open house early in the week, my opinion. And the reason is that the system syndicates the 300, 500 different websites, and some of the websites take a little while for the syndication. So if you want to get maximum exposure at your open house, Monday, Tuesday, maybe, you put in the MLS you're doing an open house. You can put in a little description, you say who's doing it, you put in the times, and then it gets syndicated to all the different websites for people that are looking for open houses. There's sign-in software, Curb Hero, Spacio, and at Place, we of course have our own open house sign-in software. The other ones you could buy if you wanted. Feedback, when somebody's signing in, what the seller really wants to know is, what do people think about their house? So the more feedback you can get, information that you could share, the better. Hold a lot of open houses. If the property is vacant, do it every day. If you don't have a lot of other listings, you can make phone calls. You can still do stuff because, you have a phone and, it can be a hotspot. But you would want to do it as often. This may come as a shock to some of you. There is no actual rule that says you can only do open houses from 1 to 4 in the afternoon on weekends. I don't know if you knew that. That's not actually a law. It's not. So could you do an open house at 9 in the morning? Could you do an open house all day on the weekend? Sure. Right? Just put it in the MLS, and there are people that might show up. My suggestion is you want to do 2 open houses. Each, like Saturday, Sunday, each one 2 open houses. Open house number 1, which I would generally start like 11 or noon, is just for the neighborhood. And so what my marketing piece said, are you a nosy neighbor? Right? That's what it said. And there was a woman looking over a fence with binoculars. For some reason, that's less creepy than a guy. But anyhow, so there was the woman looking over with the binoculars, and it says, are you a nosy neighbor? And it says, hey, we listed this property. Maybe you want to see what they did with it. This Saturday at 11 o'clock, we're going to have a special open house just for the neighbors. The owner will not be there. That's an important thing. Refreshments will be served. And what you do is you get ready with pre-listing kind of stuff. Information that you might want to give to a prospective seller, because at 11, when people start showing up, these are neighbors that own their homes because that's who you send it to, that's who you contacted. Then they're gone, right? Or then you transition at 1 o'clock, you have the open house for, the muggles, right? For everyone else, the none that are out looking around. And I would oftentimes have seller related stuff at the beginning and buyer related stuff at the end. Just a suggestion. We're going to promote it. We're going to whatever. Ongoing communication. You should give them, first of all, how do you know how often you should talk to them? Ask them. Is this the kind of thing, do you want to hear about what's going on every day? Do you want it every other day? Do you want once a week? What would, can we set a weekly appointment? What would if something comes up, I'll contact you. What would you like? And different personalities have different opinions about this. You should send them a report every week. How many people showed the house? How do you know? Well, the lockbox system knows that, right? If somebody shows the house, you should make an effort to find out what they think about it. Sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they won't. But you should make an effort and share that. You know, the buyers have been reporting that there's a noticeable doggy smell in the, in the living room. Now I didn't notice it myself, but I saw it several times. Maybe we ought to think about that. If nobody has shown it for 2 weeks, it's time to talk about making an adjustment. Right? I'm just saying something. Right, because unless they're like, well, we really don't care how long it takes, but we're not going to change anything. But one of the things that we discuss is how do you get price reductions? You should look and see how many Zillow, Redfin, most of those portals will tell you how many views and how many people liked it. When you send out emails and social posts, you get anything, the seller wants to know what's going on and what is the feedback, what are people thinking, what are they saying. Be everywhere. You put it in the MLS, it goes just about everywhere. EXP boosts it to some other places. Offer to close. Now, this is you have a couple of choices. I discussed this. Let me see, am I going to, how much more am I going to, let me just do this. When are you going to look at offers? The options are to set a date. Why would you do that? Well, the thought is that if we take offers as they come in, then maybe somebody who's got a really good offer, it's a horse race, right? Whoever's the first one in with their offer, that's who's going to buy it. But maybe there's another stronger horse that's just getting started. Oh, if the race was just a little longer, right, they would have made it to the finish line, that sort of a thing. Right, so if that's why sometimes they say, well, we're going to give it 2 weekends. And just from the perspective of a real estate agent, having a little bit of time to market the property is better than it's selling in the first 6 hours. This may seem crazy, but if it sells like in the first 6 hours of being on the MLS, it means you don't get to do open houses, you don't meet any buyers, you don't meet any other neighbors. You just don't. Right. So if you're going to say, well, we're going to have 2 weekends of open houses, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, noon, we're going to take offers, my suggestion is don't say Monday noon. Don't say Monday noon. Why not, you ask? Well, because the lender, usually what's happening on Monday is that if the buyers are interested in making an offer, they're talking to their lender on Monday, getting everything together. If all you give them is Monday morning to get their act together, you haven't met enough real estate agents and enough buyers. They might need a little more time. So Tuesday, Wednesday gives them a little bit of time to talk to their lender and get everything in order and to make an offer. If you say we're taking offers Tuesday at noon, you should block out Tuesday afternoon because they have come dribbling in afternoon. Right? I just hope that's not a shock to you, right? But not everybody's going to do it exactly at noon. They'll keep coming in a little bit later. I usually say we want it by noon, but I tell the seller we'll talk at 6 o'clock because I ought to have them all by then, I would think. The other option, so if you say we're going to wait 2 weeks and you put it in the private remarks and it's Tuesday at noon that we're going to take offers, you want to make it very clear with the seller that you're not accepting preemptive offers. And a preemptive offer is when a buyer says, well, I don't care what you say, forget this Tuesday at noon in 2 weeks. I got an offer and I want to make it right now. Now, as you learned when you studied for your real estate exam, that a real estate agent is supposed to present all offers immediately unless instructed by the seller in writing to do otherwise. And when you look at the residential listing agreement, you'll see there's a section where the seller can say, I'm instructing you not to present preemptive offers. What's the downside of doing it anyhow? Well, if you tell agents, think of the other agents. How would you feel? You've got a buyer who's interested in buying the property. and you're following the instructions of the listing agent and waiting until Tuesday at noon to present your offer, and you find out at Monday that they've sold to somebody else, and your client never even got a chance. The reason they didn't get a chance is because you were doing what the listing agent said you were supposed to do. If that agent, who you could imagine is miffed at this point, files a complaint with the ethics group at your association of realtors, first of all, there's going to be a hearing, and it will not look well for you because you told everybody not to do this, and then somebody ignored it and they got the house, and you got problems, right? Because there's an actual part of the Code of Ethics of the National Association of Realtors about treating other agents fairly, and there's an argument that you didn't do that. So once we get an offer, a whole new series kicks in. So we have to decide how we're going to present them. Now, one of the advantages of Glide and Disclosure.io is that they have a way that the offer can be presented online. In other words, the buyer's agents upload it and they answer questions. What is your offer price? How much is your loan amount? What are your contingencies? And that software will create a spreadsheet-like thing that you could show to the seller if you've got multiple offers that show what the different offers are and what the contingencies are. It's all in one place. Easy peasy, right? If you don't use the online system, then agents are going to email you copies, PDFs of their offer. And you're going to have to go through and figure out all of those details and put it someplace so that you can share it with the seller. It works a lot better if they do it through the system. Just saying. So you also need to be ready to give net sheets to the seller that shows what are they likely to net when they sell the property. Who would help you with this? Well, the escrow company, right? If you gave them, prices, they could do it. However, in another series, we're going to go through the software that you should learn how to use to calculate net sheets. If you haven't done inspections and that sort of stuff in advance, you as the listing agent may need to coordinate that with the buyer's agent if they want to get a property, a chimney, a roof, a pool, etc. The appraiser usually has a lockbox key, but not always, right? Those are all things that you're going to have to do. Here, this is the final part of this, but this part here, tracking contingencies and coordinating inspections. Let's talk about contingencies. We use software. So on the Place team, we have a program called Brivity. All that information goes into the tracking system, and in advance of the contingency period, you're given a notice. And then there's a discussion about what do you do now that you know that, let's say, tomorrow is the inspection contingency. My suggestion is that 2 days before a contingency is supposed to be removed, 2 days before, you contact the buyer's agent and you say, hey, this Friday is the inspection contingency is up. Is there going to be any issues? Will you be removing it, on Friday? If they are, well, we really don't know. And now, if you're on my team, talk to me, because if we want to put their feet to the fire, as it were, we would give them a 2-day notice to perform, which we could do in advance. It's a little snarky, but we can do it. What if we wait till Friday and they don't remove the contingency and then we give them the 2-day notice? They have another 2 days to remove the contingency. And if the second day falls on a weekend or a legal holiday, it then rolls over to the next business day. And so sometimes they get an extra 3 days to remove the contingency. And you would like to have a conversation with your seller about how they feel about that. Because what can they do if they don't remove the contingency on time and you give them the 2-day notice to perform and they don't perform? What can they do? And the answer is you could cancel the contract. That's the end of my handout. I obviously have not gone through all 171 and then 166 of the potential tasks, communications and everything, but this gives you a good outline if you're a do-it-yourselfer. Any questions about any of this?
I do, but it's off topic.
Well, you want to ask me?
I have like a quick question. It's with regard to the listing appointment that we canceled.
Yeah.
Well, so I don't know if we want to do this like right now, but I noticed that the listing is no longer active, and I suspect that it has something to do with a previous listing that's withdrawn. I think the listing was set up to cancel in June of 2025.
Oh, let's talk about this off because I have to look at it. It was active.
Yeah, I know. I saw that too, but then now it's not. So I'm
Well,
like,
so if it's not active, it's like somebody that was engaged,
uh-huh.
not engaged. Can you ask them out?
Yeah, I know.
Well, I mean, it's a warped view of life I have, but the answer is yeah, right? Is that right? I mean, you could anyhow, but it causes more conflict. So they're no longer, they're a free agent if it's not an active listing. But let's talk about that afterwards, because
Yeah.
I looked at the name of the listing company, and
Mhm.
what I think is a flat fee,
Oh, okay.
and so, but that's there's more to be discovered. Any
Okay.
other questions, comments?
Michael, I have a question. We take a listing today. We have no pictures or tour yet. The seller wants us to put it on the market right away. How do we handle that?
Well, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And usually when people see a property and it's on Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com, et cetera, and they look at it and they go, oh, this looks crappy, because the agent took pictures with their cell phone, right? Because you didn't have time to do anything. You can't get that time back.
Okay.
And so they've moved on, when do you want to dress up, right? Did you want to put on your best clothes before or after you go to the concert, the date, or whatever it is, right? And the answer should be before, not after. So if you want, my question for the seller always is this going to be a retail or a wholesale sale? And
Right.
retail sale means everything is cool, everything is good, everything is fixed, everything that's painted, it's clean, it's staged, everything is great. And when we launch it, we look our best. Now,
Right.
if you don't want to do that because you want to sell it as a fixer-upper, you want to sell it as a wholesale property, that means less money to you. Sure, we can do that.
Okay. So we want to stay in compliance, so we would make it a coming soon.
Or just an exclusion if you needed time.
Okay, so we can have the seller sign that just in case we find that the photographer and the stager, for example, couldn't come out that right away.
In the residential listing agreement, there's a spot where the seller can check a box and it says, don't start showing the property or marketing the property. And you could write in the curtain 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. And you would point out to the seller that that period of time could either be shortened or extended depending upon circumstances. And then it triggers another form that is called an SELM form that basically explains that it's good to have your property on the MLS.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarification.
Yeah.
Michael, I have one question. I know you were mentioning in regards to when you're doing open houses, in regards to the nosy neighbor situation. Now, if you're helping a listing agent with the open houses, can you do that as well? Get the community involved for that 1 hour, or we need to talk to the listing agent to do that, or how do we do that? if
Well,
possible.
propriety would say that you tell the listing agent.
Hmm.
Some listing agents are focused on getting listings from their listings and working that particular neighborhood, and they're farming, and they will not be happy that
Right.
you are you're using their listing as a springboard to get listings.
Okay.
But then, like, I wouldn't care. And if the listing agent doesn't have a bunch of listings in that area and isn't actually working the area, why would they care? Right.
Okay.
But and if, you probably should let the listing agent know that you're doing 2 open houses, and rather than saying the first one is to get listings in that neighborhood, the first one I would say is to invite neighbors,
Mhm. Okay.
owners or
Got
what.
it. Got it. Thank you, Michael.
Michael, I have a question.
Mhm.
The question is regarding open houses. If the seller is not interested in hosting, having their home open to the neighbors to see, because it's their feeling that that's primarily marketing, for, the listing agent, if you will. How would you respond to that?
So statistically, when they ask buyers, how did you find the house you bought? It's about 5% of the time or so they say that they did it through the open house. So let's say the seller wants to net the most money possible. In order to net the most money possible, we need the highest offer price we can get. And the way to do that is to expose your property to the greatest number of qualified potential buyers. And everything we remove, every avenue of access we cut off, means that fewer buyers are going to see the property, and the one who might have paid more may miss it.
No, I'm gonna get just eggs because we don't have eggs.
I hear somebody else is talking, but anyhow, the other thing I would point out is that what they're talking about is sort of outdated, because with the new rules from the NAR settlement, buyers have to, if they want to tour property, they need to have a real estate agent. So, and they need to have a written agreement with the real estate agent. So how could buyers see your property without having a real estate agent already? And the answer is an open house. And so open houses have become more important because it exposes to the property to the greatest number of potential buyers, right? Because that's a whole avenue that we wouldn't get without it. The other thing, and by the way, I've had sellers say to me, I don't want to do open houses, it's just for you guys to get more clients. I don't want you. And I always say, that's great. That's wonderful. Just sign the listing. We'll do it. Then once I've got the listing, I would say, look, either they are calling you or making appointments to come by one at a time all day long, right? All day long, like Saturday and Sunday, all day long, starting at the beginning of the morning when the lockbox is open, one at a time, they're going to be coming by. Or we could tell everybody between 1 and 4, we're having an open house, and we could run all of the buyers and agents through at that one time, which would be a lot less stress on you, don't you think? Wouldn't that be better than having them each make their own individual appointment to see the house? I mean, really. Right, so that's not convenient for you either. It reduces the number of potential buyers. It's particularly more important in today's market because of the changes, and statistically speaking, a significant percentage of buyers, when they asked, how did you find the house, said, I saw it at an open house. What's the downside? Is this on principle? You don't like me and you wouldn't want me to meet anyone else that may want to buy or sell a house? Is that it? Right? Do you want to let the air out of my tires when I'm not looking to? I mean, why do you care? And I don't quite say it that way, but you get the point. What's the downside to letting us do this? Right? It's not convenience, because if we don't do it, you're just going to be showing the property all day.
Michael, this is Pua. I have a question in regards to signing the listing and for the listing time period. And I guess it's just a question in regards to what I've been seeing. I'm seeing listings on the MLS that have a time period of like 6 months, 9 months. Is the 90 days EXP's limitation or maximum time frame?
EXP doesn't have any rules about this. If it's for more than a year, it has to be an LLC. But EXP is not going to tell you, other than what the California Civil Code says, what your maximum can be. So this is a age-old, issue. What are the average days on market? Is the seller going to price high, low, or where they want to end up? How cooperative is the seller going to be on showing the property? And if the seller's not going to be cooperative and the seller wants more money than it's probably worth, and we're going to need more time. All right, we're going to need more time. Now, if the seller is cooperative, and let's say you're in Silicon Valley where the average days on market is like 10, right, days, 90 days, you could sell it 3 or 4 times, right, and still, and still make it. So, and if you're doing a good job, it's not hard to get an extension. But if there's issues with the property and it may take longer because of the issues, longer. See, the 6 months sounds like a long time, doesn't it? So I usually tell them that instead, why don't we do 24 weeks?
Okay, so basically, depending on those parameters that you just identified, we can list it for longer than 90 days?
Yeah, there's no 90-day rule on listings.
Okay.
There is
I
none.
thought I read it somewhere
No.
or was told somewhere. Oh,
So
no.
for
Okay.
a buyer representation agreement under the California Civil Code and the settlement with the NAR has a 90-day limit.
Oh, that's what I got. Okay.
Right? But you
Just
can
got it mixed up.
listings can be for up to a year if the seller is a human, and for even longer than a year if it's an LLC or a type of corporation.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. Hi. Any more? We're losing people, so I should. All right, I'm assuming that you've had enough. Right?
Yes,
The
thanks, Michael.
SDLM was discontinued.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. That's because it's been added into the form at the end. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Everybody have a great day. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you, Michael.
excellent.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.